Man, just like to hop on. You're gonna have to like edit the shit out of this. I'm so sorry.
Okay, well now we know who's editing this episode.
Oh, listen, you're editing this episode.
Alright, okay.
You literally just said yesterday you have free time. I was like, nah, you got it.
Did I?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
or this morning. Yeah, today. You're like, oh, I had like nothing to do, so I took a nap.
Shut up.
This is
The
Bhangra Podcast.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. Today, it's me and Nana answering your questions. Why? Because we're out of content. And we need
No, don't tell people that.
No.
We're so good at our jobs. Don't worry.
Yo, we're not. What are you talking about?
You're bad publicity for us.
Oh, I'm such trash. Anyways.
All right, so we have got some questions. The way that mailbags work is we put out a bat signal to see if people who listen to us have things that they want us to answer directly. I guess disclaimer on this entire thing is we don't actually know anything.
Don't take me don't take anything. Their opinions.
Don't do it. Okay. Yeah, all the opinions that we have here are purely opinions. Do we know anything about anything? No, but we have a podcast. We're going to talk about things. All right. So, first question we've got from Ratika Gore, who asks, can guys dress as girls?
Yes. I want to see it. I want to see it so bad. Listen.
Yeah, I also say yes, hands down. Well, okay, the question is, can it happen? Yes. Do I think everyone will lose their shit? Also, yes. Do I think it matters? No, I don't think it really matters. It shouldn't matter.
No,
We're
it
also,
matters. It matters. It shouldn't matter, but it matters. It matters in the sense that like it's a moment.
Yeah, the first team to like do that completely seriously, that will be a moment. That will be a moment that I'm very excited for. I don't know, in some ways it's almost like we're halfway there already. We already have teams, often guys teams, do segments where they have men in men's worthy acting out like effeminate things, mostly for comedic purposes, but it's a thing where men are doing things on stage with like a junni or they're like are doing gidda, and mostly it's for comedic effect. But I'm super curious what would happen if it weren't a joke, which is actually we went that step further and put the men in the women's vardi and said, okay, have at it. Like this is what we're doing. Because the other thing is that like dressing the opposite way, we're having women in men's vardi has been done for so long, but it's not really been done for like statement purposes. It's been done mostly to balance rosters.
Yeah.
Which is, I think if you started to do that if that was the justification for having men and women's vardi, I think it's a fair argument. I think it's interesting because, like I said, everyone will lose their minds. But
so it's interesting because after that Gabe episode that I did and like reading literally all his fucking papers, there is actually a lot of evidence, or maybe not a lot of evidence, but there is evidence. There are historical examples of men's gidda and other dance forms like sami. Sami is also traditionally an exclusively female dance, but we do some sami in Bhangra, and same thing with gidda. There's now an incorporation of gidda steps into Bhangra as well, and so it is interesting to think Bhangra has included pantomiming of very feminine and effeminate actions on stage. Could you translate that to dressing like a woman on stage? I'm trying to make like the folk argument right now, and I'm like failing dramatically. But there is like I feel like there is some evidence to that. And then the other thing I was gonna say. So you were talking about how we're halfway there. I mean, I would absolutely not argue that we're halfway there. We're maybe like an eighth of a step of the way there. In that, the same way how I remember having this conversation with you like a while ago. You were telling me this earlier when you were trying to explain how Monica dancing in a bug and not being a gimmick was a big reason why FCB having a girl on an all guys team was a huge deal. In comparison to AG, where there was a girl dancing in a bug for a majority of the set, but then bug taken off. Oh, whoa, girl, wow.
yeah, FCB like normalized.
Yes,
It.
and so now,
So
now like we're at the point where we're like one step behind the AEG moment, where.
So basically, you're saying like the thing that would probably need to happen next for us to get to a point where guys could dress as girls and it wouldn't be a big deal would be for someone to dress a guy as a girl and have it be a moment in the set to incorporate it, to draw attention to it almost.
I think so. Yeah, no, that is what I'm saying.
Isn't that like logistically very difficult though?
Oh, I'm saying if it's to follow the same path. Realistically, I don't think.
But like, what's the point? Like, if
there
I
is no
okay,
point.
if I put you in a chutney and was like, Umar is going to be your gimmick, we would not make it 8 counts of the set before the gimmick was revealed because you have a beard and like you are really, really like
let's make
conventionally masculine looking.
Yo,
so
Akash Bansal, we got you. You haven't grown a beard in years. It's fine. We got you.
Okay. But hypothetically, we have 2 options here. We have Akash or Umar. If I went with Umar,
yeah,
it's a lot. I think this is why it's an issue, right? It's because it's harder to disguise a guy as a girl because of the way the word is, especially. So I don't know if we're even gonna get that option to like kind of soften the blow. That's really what a gimmick does, right? It softens the blow. It's like, we know we're doing this edgy thing, but don't worry, it's not serious.
No, honestly, this realistically will not happen. Like, I would love to see it. I want to see Uncle G lose his mind. I want to see everybody lose their mind. But at the same time, we have to normalize. Like, it would have dudes just walking around in like a skirt just has to be normalized. Period. Like in like normal like.
I mean, gender like as a performance is a concept that more and more people are familiar with and accepting of. I think the South Asian community is just a little late to the game as usual, but
you're right.
I think we could get there. I would really, really love to see someone like basically wants to like express gender in like a different way than just being a guy and guys worthy or.
Listen, this is only gonna happen on DDR now. You know what you have to do.
I'm
like
right, Jordan and I are switching worthy. That's what's happening.
Like let's be real. Like the only team that like could make sense.
Like, that's really silly to like put the burden on like the same team over and over again to keep breaking barriers. Like it's exhausting.
Oh yeah.
So
no, yeah.
I think like maybe like RVD is gonna be the one that's
RVD.
Like,
yo, Prince, you got this.
Do it,
please.
Do it.
All right. Next. So, Radhika V. Gore has asked a question. How do you do song selection? I don't do a lot of song selection. Honestly, my biggest contribution to most mixes is beats. I listen to a lot of weird rap or like songs that just people don't really listen to because I like interesting beats. And so usually like my job, if anything, is to find those very like weird beats that people haven't used, quotables and things like that. And so I will, for the most part, be looking for vibes. And whenever FCB is trying to make a set or make a segment, I'm thinking about the ups and downs throughout the set. And so let's say beginning, we want to do a hype ass beginning. Shika segment, super hype. And then, okay, we're now thinking about like we're climbing. Okay, we just had like a peak moment in the set. Now we need to slow things down a little bit in order to make the next peak of the set hit harder. And so then I will also then be looking, okay, we need something a little bit more chill. We need something like a little bit more vibey, things like that. And so that's how I go about it. I'm thinking about vibes that I'm trying to portray within a segment, and then I look for songs based off of that.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before, and like you don't necessarily listen to like a lot of Punjabi music or know that much when it comes to picking the actual songs that make up the set. You're better at picking the vibe, but I would argue that the vibe should really be the guiding principle of song selection. I've done song selection both as a captain and then as a mixer as well, and for me personally, that is the guiding principle. Is what do I want the segment to feel like? If you're a captain, I think the best thing you can do is get an idea ahead of time of what you want your segment to look and feel like. So just because you're doing a Fumania does not mean that you should just tell your mixer, hey, pick a Fumania. What does your Fumania do in your set? Is it a hype moment? Is it a chill moment? Even without knowing what the song sounds like, I think it's beneficial to kind of have some idea ahead of time of what you're going for, because it'll really help your mixer pick a song if you're reliant on them. It'll really help your mixer get an idea of what kind of soundscape they should really be painting for you. I also really have a strong preference for things that I haven't heard a million times as a mixer, but then also just as a listener of other mixers.
Got one last time to hear yo, if I hear that again.
I mean, listen, there's a limited number. That's a separate issue. Some of the reasons that
I'm just ruining
Yeah,
your
so
time
some of
now.
the reason that like those keep happening actually is I think because those are some vocals that are easily available as just the vocals
Yeah.
without the rap instrumentals behind them. It is very hard to get isolated rap vocals.
You're right.
So mixers send each other files and packs of stuff, and that's definitely what's in all of them. But they are hype, so I personally give people free passes on that. But it's like, so one thing I've noticed a lot the last couple years especially is that a Punjabi song will come out, it'll be really good, and so everyone will want to use it. So everyone will use it, and then they'll go to their fall comps, and they'll hear everyone else using the song, and they'll say, oh, we should probably change this. What else just came out that's really good? So switch to that song, but everyone else had the same idea. So then for the next 7 months, that is the song that everyone used. And this kind of just keeps happening. Why this is happening is a separate issue, but I would say that if you really want your team to be unique, it's not just about having unique moves. It's about the whole presentation of what you do on stage feeling unique. And to me, audio is a huge component of that. So I guess if I had to distill this down to a couple different things, I would say for song selection, make sure you're picking songs that have underlying beats that match or can be made to match the dole beats required for the segment you're doing. So if you're doing the mall segment, making sure that the songs you're picking have underlying beats that can either be made into the mall by your mixer comfortably or already have that in there. Also, try to pick things that are matching the vibe of your set more than like particular song. Don't get too attached to particular songs. Be more invested in the overall impression that the song is making and on the audience, but then also on your dancers. You want to be excited about it. And try to pick songs that make you sound different. That may not just be the song itself. That may be the underlying beat. That may be the mixer that you're working with has a really unique sound. But even if you look different from everyone else, if you sound the same as everyone else, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
That being said, you can't go wrong with the classic song. So
100%.
Yeah, like you find the like folkiest, oldest recording of whatever song you're thinking of that like everybody knows the lyrics to, gets the crowd bumping. Everybody loves to sing along to the song at the drop, and it makes it always hit that much harder. That and those older songs, a little bit personally like much more malleable in terms of what kind of vibe you want to go for. You can add a certain backbeat, you can add certain things to those older sounding songs and make something really interesting.
Right, that's because they were recorded with a dole though.
Yeah.
Like older songs are easier to use a lot of times for Bhangra because they literally they're the same bolian that were used for Bhangra like originally and are used for Bhangra now. So for that reason, older songs a lot of times are easier to mix. I don't want to say less goes into it.
There are fewer layers.
That's not true.
Exactly.
There's fewer layers, so it's easier to kind of build your own sound around those vocals and beats.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, listen, you can never go wrong with a crowd pleaser. But my personal thing would not to be make a whole set of just crowd pleasers.
Oh, it's really funny because we did that once, and they were like, "This is the best mix you've ever made in your entire life," and I was like, "All right, man."
Was this Bruin 2016?
No, this was a Clutch City, whatever year that was, 2017.
Oh, that's so weird that you say that because I thought the Clutch mix was sort of like that, but the biggest thing for me was the fact that you guys did all pre-2010 tracks.
Yeah, that was a point. That was like
that was like as a concept, that was super cool. But like I know that like Ram and I talked about this. Apparently, the Bruin 2016 mix was, really well received.
Oh. Loved
but
it.
That's not my favorite mix. My favorite mix is actually the Big Ten one because the Big Ten FCB one was just so different sounding from everything else.
Yeah.
So anyway, personal preference definitely comes into it.
All right.
Okay, so next question from Nikhil. Should reusing segments lower creativity scores?
So there really just depends because there are certain things teams own. Like in all honesty, like FCB owns Gatos on their planes. Fortele owns Shings. SGPD owns the heel click. NJ owns Amplifier. But then there's like this weird like liminal zone where FCB is the only team, and it's a very iconic moment to drop Kunde from the ceiling. Can I bring that back once? Fudge does the tank shit where they come out of the tank, they end the set of the tank or whatever. Like how many times can they do like that is their thing? But is that like there is some gray zone.
There's definitely gray zone, but I think the thing to remember as like a guiding principle here is that we're talking about, like, the question is framed in terms of specifically taking points off a rubric, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about judging. Judging is not this set against all sets ever. It's this set against the other sets that are here tonight. So if you're talking about creativity, is it objectively less creative to use the same segment over and over again? I think so. Do I think that teams have a right to do it? Yeah, I think you came up with it, you can dance it. But if it is still a more creative segment than everyone else there that night, I think you get the points.
Yeah.
I think you get the points because it's relative, right?
Yeah, and I will say though, like the rule of thumb that I remember, like when I was starting to make sets, is that you make it, you got it for a year. You can milk it as much as you want. Everybody kind of does it already, because think about it. You go to Berg, all right? You try out a bunch of different segments. Half of them fall flat. Half of them like hit really hard. You keep those same 2 or 3 segments the entire year. I don't think anybody really gets docked creativity points because, like, oh, I saw you do it at Berg, but now it's blowout. And basically, like, nobody's gonna really dock you points at all unequivocally within the same season. Now. Right. But then, you know, like, Bruin to Berg, like, you could probably get away with it. But then, like, Bruin to, like, next year at Bruin, no, you're probably not getting away with that. Like, at a certain point, like, yeah, I'm gonna be like, come on, don't do it again.
I think the bigger issue is, like, not whether or not the judge is going to take off points, but whether or not you can still win with the same set over and over again, right? Because, one, if you do the same segment every time, you're supposed to judge, obviously, like, just against the other teams that are there that night. But if I see you do the same segment every single time, chances are it's going to have low impact because I'm going to know what's coming. Yeah. Like, this was actually one of the issues with, in my opinion, the FCB Berg set this year, because I know it was a 10-year anniversary thing, and so there was a bunch of gimmicks that were brought back as, like, you know, as a tip of a hat to the last 10 years. Yeah. But that did mean that there was a couple gimmicks where I saw them coming because I have seen FCB sets, right? Yeah. Now, does that mean that FCB shouldn't have done it or isn't allowed to do it because it's been more than a year since they did that gimmick? I don't think that they're not allowed to do it, but I do think that if FCB expects that every single person in the audience and every single judge is going to be, you know, wowed and never saw that gimmick coming. I mean, we don't exist in a void. We've seen a lot of that stuff before. So it may not hit the same way as freshly as it did when you first did it in 2012, 2016 or whatever, which is fine, which is fair. Yeah. But I think the bigger threat, honestly, is if you bring the same set to every comp and the same segment to every comp, other teams are going to know how to beat you because they know exactly what they're up against each time.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is that, like, end of the day, people are humans. Judges are humans, and if they've seen something before, it's just not going to hit as hard as before. So you're not necessarily going to be like, hey, team A, I saw you do this last year, so therefore I'm going to dock points. It's not going to be as outright as that, but it's going to be, well, I expected it. I'm still going to give you points, but if I'm in the deliberation room, I am not going to vouch for you as hard. Realistic, because again, I am human, and so it's just not going to stick with me as much the second time as it did the first time.
So, Saab threw this question in, which I don't know whether or not he meant it as a joke, but we're going to go for it.
All right.
So, Saab says, GOAT battle, FCB versus NJ. Which organization is more successful?
Why do you got to make me do this?
I mean...
Listen, like, put
your podcaster hat on, man. You got to be objective.
Podcast hat. Obviously, is fucking NJ. Like... They like they're first place in first places. We're first place in second places. Okay, like like all right. There's that. Putting my FCB hat back on. Yo, listen, we're second place. Like, name another team that has, like, as relevant for as long. Nah, but I mean, like, think about it. Like, DRP gets like yeah, sure, we get beat a lot, but we get second. But, like, it's just like we get second.
So NJ is first and first places. FCB is first and second places, and DRP is first and third places.
Yes, they are. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yo, we're friends with DRP. It's fine.
Okay, DRP, we love you. I personally know and love many members of DRP, but Homer's talking stats tonight, so. All right.
That's a soundbite. Next one. Let me ask you next one. All right. Aman Bansal has asked, should we put K-pop in part of team mixes?
Yes. Oh, 100% yes. We absolutely should. I don't want to hear the same Punjabi song mixed with the same hip hop song 50 times. And I don't want to keep hearing mixes that all sound the same as each other, which, I mean, we can get into why this is happening, but like, so before I was even mixing, most of the people who I've spoken to, there really weren't that many people who knew a lot about actual music production. It really was just using a lot of the canned loops that are out there and doing just splicing, cutting, throwing some very rudimentary post-processing stuff on there, and like that was the mix. But there are mixes from like 2011 that bang.
Or
and
session tapes.
so many. I mean, Classics is like an anomaly in the sense that like I think has always had really good production.
Is an actual person,
right? But the thing is that like I think if you look through the mixers that honestly have had the most consistent success and the most loyal following the last few years, they're mixers where when you listen to their work, you can tell what kind of music they listen to and what kind of music they like. And I think that's huge because everyone likes something a little bit different. Everyone has slightly different music tastes. And so if you're using that to inform your mixing, it shows. And then you're making mixes that sound different from everyone else's.
It is why I love Momo. I love that jazzy shit.
Yeah, Mohit has a background in jazz. And so, like, he has a lot of times mixes that are chiller and more melodic. And, like, we've talked about this with him before on the live cast. But I mean, you can tell that that's in there. You may not be able to say, oh, Mohit listens to jazz, but once you know that Mohit listens to jazz and plays jazz, you understand where his mixes are coming from a lot better. And Thig's another one. Like, you listen to Thig, you listen to G-Sync, both of them, there is clearly a strong old school hip-hop influence. Honestly, even the FC Beats ones for a long time. I know from listening to FC Beats that Ram listens to a lot of trap, electronic music, and, like, 2000s hip hop and rap.
Yeah.
And that's like what you see in the mixes. So you can spot them coming from a mile away. And it also just gives them such like a unique sound. If you listen to K-pop and you're a mixer, put it in the mix because no one else is doing that stuff. No one else is listening to that. No one else is expecting it. And it just like any team who dances to that, any team who dances to a mix where K-pop is in there and it's well integrated is a super lucky team in my opinion because they just got a slight edge on the audio standpoint that no other team has. They now have something in their back pocket that like no other team is working with. If your soundscape is like not compelling, what's the point, you know? I don't know. I don't listen to K-pop, but I would get a huge kick out of knowing that someone put K-pop on. I'm going to do it. I have a bucket list. I don't know if people know this. I have a bucket list of sounds and songs that I really want to put in to different mixes and kind of slip them in. I managed to hit more than one of them in the NDC mix for DDR. So I'm a huge Jessie Reyes fan, and the intro for the NDC mix that DDR had, I clipped some of her vocals for that and put them in. I'm not gonna lie, that is one of my favorite segments that I've made, and I got a huge kick out of just knowing that I had managed to sneak Jessie Reyes into a mix. They're like Easter eggs for like me and myself.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe everyone's gonna go put Jessie Reyes in their mixes now that I've said that I did that, but like that's what's like fun for me. I love to sit down and make a mix and go to my bucket list and be like, okay, which of these things can I like tick off? So I get a huge kick out of that. All right, Omar. So I did not preface that. All right, Umar, next question. Why has creativity decreased in the circuit over the past 3 years?
So me and Saab have actually talked about this a lot. And honestly, the biggest thing that I see, like now that I've been judging more and also making a lot of rubrics, or at least being in the room while a lot of rubrics are made, my biggest thing is that a lot of the rubrics and a lot of competitions don't really have an identity and they all look very similar. So, I mean, think about it. If you take your set and you go from Berg to Mela to Nashville to Blowout, you could take the same set and you could probably, and like if it was a placing set, you would probably win all of them without many differences. And
which teams have done, like 2016 CMU and MBT both took pretty much the same set the entire year.
Exactly. And you're wondering why creativity has not changed within the circuit over the past 3 years. Rubrics are looking the same, man. Like at this point, it's like, so you got MCB and 6 on one side, you got NDC and Bruin on the other, and then like literally nothing, no difference in between for pretty much most. And there's two reasons for it. There's two potential reasons that like I've thought of about this. One is that now as rubrics are going under more scrutiny by the circuit at large, a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too, because at a certain point, like you kind of just have to agree with what the comp director says, but a lot of comps don't want to shake the boat with their rubrics, and so they'll look at another rubric, say like, hey, I like this wording, I like this wording, I like this wording, and just like put it together, and it looks very similar to another competition. And that, like, it's always this thing where I want the best Bhangra to win. I want the best overall set to win. Well, if you want the best overall set to win, it's just going to be like a 50-50 split. Maybe like, oh, I want it to be more folk, so sprinkle some like traditionality points. Or like, oh, I want it to be more creative, sprinkle in some creativity points, like 5 points on the other side. And then maybe got like a 50-60-40, 55-45 split. Regardless, that's like that is 90% of rubrics now. And so if you have all the rubrics like starting to merge together, you're not going to really see any differences in creativity. But then if you go to NDC, yo, there's a dude who did, was that Frisch there, or was it you guys who did like the fucking helicopter shit?
Us.
Yeah. That was a girl shrimp did like the helicopter like on stage. I was like,
oh, no. That was BU.
That was BU. Okay.
Oh, you're talking about something completely different. No. Okay.
What are you talking about, man?
I'm talking about where DDR spun on stage as fast as possible for like 16 counts.
You're right. But that's what I'm saying. Like that, like NDC is now a really fun comp to watch because there's difference. And why does the difference happen? It's because the rubric allows for that. Like
it rewards it.
Yeah, there's no real incentive structure to be different because a lot of the times when you are different and you throw risks at the wall, like sometimes they won't stick and you just knocked yourself out of placing. But a lot of these comps that like specifically say we want risky sets, we want you to do creative and interesting things, and we will reward you for being creative. Those are the comps that you get really wacky stuff. Like Bruin, you'll get some wacky stuff because there's points for production. At the same time, like just because you don't need to like literally just add creativity points, and to do that, like Six and MCB, even though they're like folk as hell, you will get some creative things there too, because you will introduce and incorporate different folk steps, folk moves, folk beats, and folk elements that you normally wouldn't incorporate into most sets, but that is rewarded. And so
that's what I was gonna say. I feel like this, for the same reason that NDC's explicit encouragement of risk yields to more creative sets, I kind of feel like Six and Motor City also do that, but in a different way, right? Because now you're working within the parameters of traditionality. So you already know roughly what most of the sets are going to look like that night, or at least what framework and patterns they're going to follow. But you still need to win, right? So there's this additional burden of what can I do as a traditional folk team to still distinguish myself as better than everyone else. So it's like it's a different puzzle, so it yields different results.
Like theoretically, a competition could like really value formations. You're gonna see some crazy stuff. You could like crazy formations, more so than you would at a normal competition. That could be super interesting. Or maybe they really value formational cleanliness, and you will see like the straightest lines you'll ever see in your entire life. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, like comps need to have different identities.
So is that what you think? Is that what you think is like the solution?
That is the biggest thing. Like, dude, like NDC literally is the example. NDC went from like a whatever comp to like, oh shit, we have to like change our set for NDC if you want to go. And now bigger teams and more competitive teams come to that with awesome ideas. It's almost as if like changing the framework behind your competition really allows innovation and other things.
Don't do it.
Hey, so eat Bhangra.
No.
The application. Eat
question.
Bhangra applications come out October 10th. October 10th, and deadline is October 31st, 24th. I forget. All right.
Okay. Well, good job.
Yes.
You got your plug-in.
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yes. So, will the circuit be the same after COVID?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this. I am a little bit of I want to say a pessimist, but I'm a realist, and I've been having some conversations with some people about this. Obviously, things may change, but
I wonder what will change. I wonder what the addition of something will change it.
you shut up, okay? We're not talking about Bhangra anymore.
All right, fine.
So I think like it's really hard to say, but I will just say that I am worried about it staying the same and
Well,
like
how's that?
recovering. If you break this down into what are the components that make the circuit as we know it, right? So one of those is comps, and logistically it's going to be a really long time, I think, before we can have comps, because I mean, I think when the question says is the circuit going to be the same, we're talking about like 2018 to 19. For those comps to come back that we all like know and are familiar with, you're talking about being able to safely get large amounts of people from across the continent to one place, in some cases the world, depending on certain competitions, right? But you're talking about getting people from multiple cities in different parts of the world to come together, travel there without issue, without having to quarantine, because no one's trying to go to a comp for 2 weeks. So
Listen, you're not trying to go to a comp for 2 weeks.
oh, are you trying to go to a comp for 2 weeks?
Listen, if I had the time, I'd be kind of down. I'm trying to get out of med school. I'm
Yeah,
barely
okay,
in
me
med
too.
school right now. That's serious.
Okay, but like if you're talking about a non-quarantine situation, you also need everyone to be able to go there and interact with each other freely. And even if the comp is outside, this is also a conversation that's happened. Like, what if we started to have comps outside? That would mean a really limited season. But even that doesn't fix the issue of the fact that like COVID is, air transmitted, and you have people in close proximity on stage dancing really hard. And so there's a lot of heavy breathing. So even like the actual environment in which we're dancing is different. Tech time, getting an audience together, even if people were willing to dance, I think without an audience, the rest of the logistical stuff is still there. Accommodations, all this stuff. So because comps are so travel focused, I think that in-person comps, it's going to be a really long time before people are comfortable getting together and traveling for these comps and going through that weekend without worrying about their health. So that's the comp side of things, right? The other side of it is teams. And I think we're already seeing this. A lot of teams are not able to actually get together and practice. So I worry, depending on how long these kinds of restrictions are in place, how long it will take for, how long it will be before teams are able to kind of get back and practice. This isn't a problem, of course, if you're talking about independent teams, because a lot of those dancers are around, but a significant portion of the circuit is made up of collegiate dancers. And for a lot of us, that's where we like got our start when we were in college. And that is actually what I'm really worried about. It's the collegiate side of things. If you think about it, like you have freshmen that are coming in now. If it is 2 years before they're able to dance in person and go to a comp, the people that would have been able to teach them, like their seniors, will be long gone. So if they weren't necessarily able to get together and practice in person, because a lot of teams are taking the season off, in 2 years, where are they going to be as dancers?
That's honestly the biggest thing I'm worried about. And like, I know I've been like I goof off a lot, but like in all honesty, I think unfortunately, we are going to see a dearth of competitions the following year, because there's going to be a season of competitions that didn't actually happen, and so therefore those co-directors don't actually know what they're doing, and so therefore they're going to teach. It's like the blind leading the blind. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
100%.
And so same thing with dancing, and I think that there's definitely going to be a decline in the quality and quantity of collegiate teams, because a lot of them will die. Same thing with comps. There are just going to be fewer in-person comps solely because they don't have the funds from the previous year to build off of. They don't have the experience from the previous year to build off of. And without the personnel to run these competitions, they're just not going to happen. Same thing with teams.
Comps arguably more so, because I think teams, we seem to have a pretty even distribution of independent versus collegiate teams, but
comps especially.
Comps for the most part are run by collegiate organizations in some capacity.
I think the big thing that's going to happen, and I'm spitballing at this point, I think it's honestly, it might make room for the rise of a lot of these stateside academies, DFA, CIA, Dream Dance Studios, VSB, DCMPA. I think these academies are now going to have more room to send their budget or send their younger kids. I mean, listen, I get it, but Bhangra, dude, like one of the teams was a bunch of like 50 like young kids. Like there are younger teams that exist that maybe just don't go to competitions because either they apply and they don't get in, or there just isn't enough room for them. But now there might be, and you might see a proliferation of these academies take place.
I think you're right, because I think that's where the community aspect is going to shift to, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, for a lot of people, the community aspect of Bhangra starts in college. And so when you take that away, academies totally become the, keepers of those traditions and that sense of community. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity for academies. I do worry about the longevity of the circuit. If there's a drain on collegiate dancers,
yeah, for sure.
That's also a drain event for the independent teams as well.
There's going to be a recession. There's going to be a Bhangra circuit recession.
But I do think that it's not impossible, right, for everyone to come back because like you two, I don't know, like when you and I both started dancing the same year, 2014, like we were able to learn not just from the dancers around us, but arguably as much, if not more, sometimes from like the videos that were available to us that other people were pointing out to us. And so if a dancer that starts now has, that many more years of videos to look at. So I think there's definitely a lot of resources out there. And hopefully the communities that, we've been building either through like this podcast or through BTF, hopefully those also continue to be resources for people coming out of this.
Absolutely.
Whenever that may be.
God knows.
Okay, Omar, last question that we've got for today.
Yeah.
Why is it that you are always posting in BTF, and why are you involved in every single thing that there is to do with Bhangra right now?
I mean, nobody else is doing anything. Listen, I don't actually know anything. Like, it may appear that way because I do a lot of things surface level. I don't particularly consider myself the nastiest dancer or the most creative choreographer or anything like that. I just happen to be some dude who went to University of Pittsburgh, happened to join a team under Sid Pandit. Sid Pandit taught me everything he knows, and then I just kind of built off of that. And then I also just like doing things and being busy. I really do care. I've made a crazy number of connections and friends and memories, etc. through this circuit. I wanted to continue, but I also wanted to continue in a somewhat more organized and like representable fashion, because honestly, I'm not doing this because I think my opinions matter that much. Dude, if somebody else had done it, I would not have done this. And like, if somebody else had started a podcast, I wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm gonna start my own podcast and be like, no, like it's like, hey, it's there. The void is filled. No, somebody else could have started an online Bhangra competition in this format. That's not an Instagram like competition. Nobody did, so I did it.
I think it's a conversation that we all keep circling back to as dancers, which is, why is BTF dead? Why is the circuit dead? Like, these are conversations we keep having. Clearly we're all bugged by it, but I think that, this is something that's actually on a personal note has changed for me over the last couple of years, where I think my perception of my role in the circuit has also shifted as I've started to move to like considering retirement a few times. And I don't feel the same way I did about dancing as I did a few years ago. I still love dancing, but I don't think that dancing is it for me. I feel more attached to the Bhangra community, and I think my role in it is also different than what it used to be. And so the podcast for me is like one way that I feel like I can kind of contribute to sustaining some sense of community. But I don't know. I think that like what it would take for us to stop worrying about the circuit, dying, or whether or not we're going to come back after COVID, or whether BTF is going to continue to be a resource for people. I think if we want to stop worrying about that, then more people, myself included, need to think seriously about what our role is in that community and what we're doing to make sure it, stays alive.
Stop complaining and do something, dogs. No, I'm serious. Like, you want to complain about me, like, posting on Facebook all the time? Yo, I'm trying to start something, because like, unlike DDN, there will never be some kind of central organized force in Bhangra. There's just too many factions. The circuits are too disparate in ideologies.
Do you think that would make a big difference? Do you think if we had some sort of umbrella organization for our circuit, people would worry less about the longevity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if there was some kind of organizing force, there would be less worry about the longevity, because it's just like, oh, there's some kind of structure. There isn't. There's not going to be one. I'm not arguing for one. I don't want one. And for the Bhangra circuit specifically, I really like the variety that this has, and I dislike vehemently DDN's like control over everything.
But it does then put the onus more on individual people to like sustain everything.
Yeah,
you know?
And so some like people need to step up and do something about it. Are you tired of like the lack of conversations happening around the circuit? Start a podcast. Start a conversation. Something. If you're tired of like, oh my god, there's not enough competitions in my area, or like, the rubrics are at these competitions suck. Okay, start a comp. Do something. Dude, listen. Like, yeah, you might see my face around a lot. You might see Sid's face around a lot. Rom's more so lately. Sab's, you're going to see a lot. Nana's, you're seeing a lot. We also didn't get to where we are. We're like nowhere. We're just like we're not special. Like, okay, we just hit up a few people and said, yo, this would be really cool, wouldn't it? All right, let's figure it out. Let's do it. Let's talk to some people.
And even before that, even before we had ideas about what may or may not be cool, when we truly didn't know anything, we hit up people to be like, hey, will you help me with this? Which is like very scary sometimes. I know this. I've done it before. But like in both of our cases, we definitely were reliant on people kind of stepping in and seeing potential in us and, you know, helping us out, which is definitely something that like we as older dancers can do. But also asking for help was something that I think dancing taught me how to do way more effectively than I did before.
Yeah. Listen, like, asking for help is super important. And also, I want to help other people. There's a reason we started the one of the big reasons we started the podcast was because, well, BTF is dying. Conversations aren't really happening. Here's a more accessible way to get information to people. Eat Bhangra, it started because, well, shit, if there's no competitions for an entire year, there's going to be a recession, so let's make sure there's something to do. I want the circuit to survive. I want the circuit to thrive. And we also want to pass down that knowledge so that, I don't know, 3-4 years from now, when I'm probably doing less of this stuff, somebody else can be popping into Facebook and saying, sup, y'all. We have to do...
Sup, y'all.
Yeah.
On this episode of Bhangra Podcast.
Exactly.
Applications are out soon for this competition.
Yes. But, yeah, like, listen. If you're somebody who wants to do more on the circuit, just reach out to us. Reach out to anybody. And just start shit. Talk to other people. Figure out a plan. Make it happen.
Yeah, this whole circuit is built on the backs of people who made that same move at some point or other.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and Podchaser, as that really helps others find the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of them at the Bhangra Pod. If you want to know what else is going on in the podcast world, sign up for our newsletter and join our Discord server to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. There will be links to all of those in the show notes.